everybody. Welcome into Afternoon Live on the Maize and Blue Review, weekdays at 1 o'clock. We're part of Rivals.com. We talk about the latest in Michigan sports. And if you've been paying attention, there is a few things to talk about. It's great. I'm Dennis Fitthy, and I'm joined by Trevor McCue, who works for the Maize and Blue Review as well. And you see him on the screen. If you're watching this right now, we're ready to get after it. How you doing, Trevor?
Good, Dennis. How you doing?
I'm doing good. More or less than 48 hours until the NFL draft, and we were waiting on a midnight deadline this week to see what was going to happen with college players throwing their hat in the ring. We are going to get to that. We're going to get to the draft as well. We're going to start out, though, talking about a player that people might not know about until a couple of years from now. That's kind of just the way it's going here. That's where we'll start out. A youngster, it just, as I was scrolling through, I saw a video of this youngster, Bryce J. Underwood. And you might look at that and say, well, what's the big deal? You know, he's a high school quarterback, prep quarterback. And then you look down here and you think, 14 years old, class of 2025. What are we talking about here? And it wasn't this picture here, although he looks like a man already. I would not guess that he was 14 years old just looking at that. But it's the video here. We'll let it play a few times. Trevor, here it is. All right, so what are we looking at here from your scout background here? What are we looking at? Overpowering. Pause it here. Overpowering us as we talk. All right, Trevor, what were we looking at there?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, just him as a prospect, he's 6'3", 205 already at 14, just sticks out. That frame's going to continue to fill up. So, and yeah, like you said, it feels like it's way in the future. But if you think about it, they start talking to these kids 8th and 9th grade, and we're already getting heavy into the 24 recruiting as well. 23 guys are starting to make decisions. So this time next year, you're going to hear about Bryce Underwood a lot. But yeah, on this throw specifically, it's kind of a thing Stafford's known for, and Mahomes has been doing more recently. But there's a corner dropping back into zone there who is responsible for the out route and then, being the second man on that post. So he's keeping an eye on that out route. So the zone defender goes with him, and then he hits no-look post right there. Just ridiculous throw for a 14-year-old. I mean, it's 7-on-7 drills, no tackle, whatever. Not to make a huge deal of it, but we saw JJ with his 360, 50-yard throw a couple of years ago as well. Just the talent that these kids have already and the physical tools they have already. He's going to be somebody to watch out of Bellville for sure.
Yeah, I'm not ready to put him into the Michigan class or put him into the 2029 NFL draft, or anything. I did find out with a little, further research that the wide receiver that you can see there in the background pulling that ball in is a Michigan commitment in Samaj Morgan out of West Bloomfield. So you have that. And if you wanted to feel good about it, if you take a closer look at those cleats, those are those are definitely, you see the maize bottoms there, but those are the Jumpman cleats that are so popular that you see. So he is running some Michigan cleats, and he's throwing to a Michigan commit, and he is right in Michigan's backyard. So you do put those things together and say, hey, Michigan, at least you'd be monitoring the situation. And, when I first watched, when I first saw this video, this youngster, I was watching on a small screen on my phone, and I thought, this guy looks like, Dante Culpepper, he's just this giant. And now I'm looking at it a little bit, and he still does not look like a 14-year-old throwing the football, and he's got a frame where he looks like he can be as big as Dante Culpepper. But all those things It's supposed to be fun, and watching him with the no look and the size, and all of it. To me, this is fun. Oh, no look. You're right. It's funny hearing you say, Matt Stafford, because it was so long where I was like, Matt Stafford should not be doing these no look passes. The guy can't complete, the over the top regular passes, and then look at him now. He can do it all.
Yeah, I like bringing up Stafford because everybody likes to pretend Mahomes invented a lot of these moves. And then when Stafford went to the Rams this year, it's like, oh, look at all these throws he's making. He's been doing it for 10 years in Detroit. So I'm going to make sure he gets the credit for doing that first. But yeah, Underwood will be a good one to watch. And then Steve Clinkscale was actually one of the first people to start recruiting him down in Kentucky. So now with him here at Michigan and, Bellville and Michigan in years past have had some back and forth things. So with Clink here, I think that recruitment could go pretty smoothly for Michigan. But yeah, we'll wait another year, 18 months before we get too heavy into it, hopefully.
Yeah, let's look at 23 before we start talking about
right.
24 and 25. But it's just something, it happens, and
it's cool, yeah.
It's like it can go the other way. I can remember in 8th grade seeing video and people talking about Amani Bates and like, oh, he's further along than LeBron James, and of course he's right in Michigan's backyard. They're like, well, he's never going to set a foot on a college campus. He'll be able to go pro by then, and now here he is. And we might talk a little bit about Amani Bates, here in just a second or two. We'll get to some more football coming up here straight ahead as well. But let's start out with basketball. And if you were paying attention yesterday, you saw that Michigan got great news from Hunter Dickinson, who put out this particular tweet right here saying that I ain't done. And the big man 7-1 is coming back, which is great news for Michigan. He's somebody that I thought was going to go to the pros after his freshman year. Certainly thought he was going to go after this year, and here he is coming back for his junior year. Nothing but good things to say about number one in the Maize and Blue, Trevor.
No, and we were kind of anticipating this out of all the three, that he would be likely to come back. Just huge moving into next year, trying to build off of that late Sweet 16 momentum. Hunter's going to be obviously the leader and captain of this team, and he's going to come back with a lot of preseason player of the year potential. And I made the comparison in the chat that I'm anticipating like a 92 Christian Laettner kind of year, where I think he could be one of the best players in basketball, and everyone but Michigan fans are going to hate him. He's just, he's just got that annoying villain role, and he's kind of taking it on. So, yeah, unfortunately for him, and we'll kind of bleed into the other guys as well, he's a little old for his class, and the way the NBA is now, what he was able to improve on in his sophomore season just isn't enough to get him into that ready to draft territory. So he's better off maybe going the Luka Garza route. It's kind of what I've been referring to it as, because he's kind of close with Garza, which is they come back to college, get your NIL money, and dominate college as much as he can. And that's probably going to be his path back into the draft. So that's the route he's going. And I think he loves college. We've seen that the past few weeks, some things we've been hearing. So yeah, just uber excited to have him back. I think he's going to be a lot of fun next year.
Yeah, it's really working out for Hunter Dickinson because of the name, image, and likeness, and it's working out for Michigan. In years past, you'd see, if you brought in a 4 or 5 star, and they came close to living up to the hype, they were gone. They're going to give you lottery picks. They're certainly going to be first round picks, and you want the best for the kids, you want the best for the schools and everything else. But what you hope for is sometimes a guy just a fringe guy who wants to stick around. And that's what I was thinking last year. And then this year, I thought when you mentioned his age, that he was just going to be like, well, forget it. I'll go. And I think I can, even if I'm not drafted, I can find even if it's going to be a 2-way contract, eventually I'll be on an NBA bench, and who knows, where that'll end up. But this is the best case scenario, certainly for Michigan, and being able to pocket some cash along the way. Now that you're Dickinson is obviously fantastic, for him, that he can profit off of his name and image and likeness. You mentioned the 2 other guys, and Moussa Diabate and Caleb Houstan. Both of these guys, I copied and pasted your story from TMBR, the pictures and the headline, and So they're both going, and they'll both enter the draft. They both throw their hat in the ring, talking about Michigan's 2 5-stars from last year. But both of them have until June 1st to take their names out. What's your read on Diabate in Houston? If you think they're likely to stay in there, go through the process, all of that, how do you think this plays out?
Yeah. So first off, it's a no-brainer decision for them, just like Hunter last year. The ability to go through the combine, the evaluation process, get some feedback from teams, and then still come back to school. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. So I wasn't shocked that either one did it. In terms of what I think is going to happen, right now I don't know. And the reason why is I know a lot of people like to say, hey, these guys aren't ready. They need to come back and work on XYZ, right? Well, in terms of the NBA these days, there's maybe 10 or 15 players that the NBA considers ready. Those lottery pick guys that are going to play next year. Almost everyone else, they're looking at two-way players, guys in the G League, that they're going to develop over a year or two. And that's why you see a lot of guys get drafted on potential at a younger age than, say, like a Hunter Dickinson, who is almost being punished for being 21, Either one of these guys I could see go to the combine, show flashes of their 5-star potential and why people thought they could potentially be lottery picks this year, and a team tell them, hey, you know what? I'm going to take you at the back end of the first round because I get the extra lock-in. Or, what happened with Jordan Poole, where he got assurances like, you're not getting out of the first round. Or, they're more likely second-round grades. Is a team going to promise them, I'm taking you in the second round? Is that enough for them to say, you know what? I'm going to go be a second-round pick and do this G League thing for a couple of years? Or are they going to take the feedback, come back to college, play another year, and see where they line up next year? Because if you do come back and you don't take huge strides and start to show, a dominance, then you might be in the same spot or even a worse spot than you were in that first year. So I know a lot of guys get mad when a guy goes at the first chance to go, but they kind of have to because they might not see that opportunity again. So my guess right now is I think one of them, I go back and forth between the two. I do think one of them is going to get enough of assurance that they're probably going to go. Sometimes I think that's Caleb. Sometimes I think it's Moussa. I'll be interested to see how the combine goes. But the days of like, oh, they're not ready, they're coming back, it just doesn't exist anymore. The NBA treats the G League much more like, MLB was treating their minor league system, or even hockey with theirs. So these guys are getting drafted with full anticipation that they're going to the G League versus drafting guys out of the G League, with the Ignite team or whatever. So each one's going to have to make the decision for themselves, what makes the most sense. And, they're obviously going to have agents there trying to tell them what to do. And that, hopefully they have, good camps around them. Obviously, Juwan, being with the NBA ties, I think is going to be a huge help for both of them, depending on the feedback that they get. But to be frank, I wouldn't be surprised with both coming back, none coming back, one. I'll be interested to see, when we get in the middle of May, that combine in Chicago, what kind of things we start hearing. Actually, if either of them get invited to the full combine versus, I can't remember what they call the G League portion that Hunter and Diabate were in last year. But if they're in that second part of the combine, that's going to be kind of the first clue that they're more likely to come back.
Yeah, and while the NIL worked in Hunter Dickinson's favor, he's a known commodity. It does not work well for foreign players. Caleb Houstan from Canada, Moussa Diabate from France, because they're here on visas, and whatever the language is there, you're not allowed to get income in certain ways, which is the name, image, and likeness. Certainly can't profit with big time cash coming their way. Kentucky, the Player of the Year, Oscar Tshiebwe, they have found, I don't know if it's a loophole or however they did it, they were able to line his pocket. So, maybe there is a way, and maybe, that is in the cards for these guys. But it's also, a part where if, in the past, nobody was getting paid, you kind of get it, or you're getting under the table. Now that you're able to profit, and then there are guys that are actually getting the money, and you're a 5-star, and, the cash is going right by you, you might say, hey, I'm out of here. So I think that part works against both of them. I'm going to ask you. You ran through these scenarios. I'm going to have you pick a door here, and the first door is Diabate and Houstan returns. You already said that you didn't think that was going to happen. Both of them. Door B would be Diabate going and Houstan returning. Michigan just had a transfer in from Texas Tech, Terrence Shannon Jr. They're also bringing a guy in, a guard from Princeton, who's supposed to be visiting. If it's not today here, he's going to be visiting shortly. The plans are in for him. C is kind of the alternate of B there. It has Diabate staying and Houstan going. Door E is both of them going, and then Michigan landing Shannon Jr. And there's the aforementioned Amani Bates, who still shows up a little bit, at least online. Maybe not with the experts. Maybe I don't see Josh Henschke, mentioning Amani Bates a lot of the Maize and Blue Review, but that hasn't stopped people online from mentioning him ending up in Ann Arbor. And then door F would have both of them leaving, Michigan landing Shannon Jr. and another transfer like the youngster that they're Llewellyn, I think his name is, that they're bringing in from Princeton. So we could have a couple extra doors here. But as it sits here right now, if you had to pick a door for Michigan, which door are you selecting?
Door B. I think, again, I go back and forth between the two, but I do think Moussa is probably the more likely to go between the two of them, because I think the feedback I've seen with Houstan about whether Michigan misused him or, with this, if he can be a spot up 3 guy, things like that. I think he has more he can show from a consistency level, where I think Diabate, they see as a guy that they're like, hey, we can put in the G League for a year or two, build some muscle, and he's going to be a solid defender, rebounder, blocker, etc. But and then Shannon coming in, that gives an opportunity for Houstan to move to the 4, where I think he would actually be a better fit. Shannon can play the 3 or the 2. You kind of get some flexibility with the lineup there. That's the thing, is if Moussa comes back playing with Hunter, I don't know if he's going to be able to do the things he needs to do to bump his draft stock up as much as Houstan will be able to. So if that's part of the equation, like, okay, if I do come back, what am I going to be able to achieve? I think Houstan has the advantage. If they both go, door F, that's the next most likely option to me, is they both go. And then that could explain the Llewellyn pursuit, adding him as depth. And, we've heard rumors about some other adjustments that can be made with someone on scholarship currently moving off to make room. I know they'll figure it out as the answer we always get. The one I will cross off and say 0 chance is door E.
And for those that are listening on the
sorry, apologize.
Okay. The door E has both Diabate and Houstan going, and Michigan landing Shannon Jr. and Amani Bates. So you don't like that one, but the possibility of door F with both of them leaving and Michigan getting Shannon Jr. and then Llewellyn, that seems, especially after this morning, that door is potentially one that you could be walking through.
Yeah, I could see that. And again, it's not a tick for tack replacement, right? But what you would be getting in those, hypothetical situation, if those are the 2 transfers that come in, they're both players that can play multiple spots. So Llewellyn he's a little bit shorter, but he's kind of a Eli Brooks type in the sense that he's a combo guard. So he'll play the 2, can score, shoot, but can run a little bit of point as well. And then obviously Shannon's a guy who can be a shooting guard as well as a small forward. So, we saw kind of a heavy lineup last year, struggle with a few rotations early on with all the forwards. So I think even though you're losing Diabate and Houstan, adding those 2 guys would be just as much about balancing out the roster in general. And frankly, taking advantage of what your 2 best players are going to be arguably next year in Hunter and then, hopefully Frankie, seeing Frankie's game expand from the point. So building around those guys, and then you're adding somebody like Shannon, and then that's why I like the option to be the most, where if Moussa does go and you move Houstan to the 4 and Shannon's either playing the 2 with T. Will at 3 or playing small forward with Kobe Buffkin at the, shooting guard spot, that is the ideal result in my opinion. But yeah, Amani's not coming. So
Yeah, you don't like that door E. That's a hot door.
I don't know if I don't.
That's a Twitter door. That's an Elon Musk door that everybody's excited about. You know, the thing for me, it's I don't know if it's a funny door or not, but Moussa Diabate is a very entertaining player. Like, he's a high riser. He does some things that are incredible out there. You're like, wow, like this guy's somebody that, you know, you jump out of your seat when you're watching him. In Houston, I thought that he was going, you watch a flat out shooter and a volume 3 guy, and you see some of these guys, you're expecting to see all these different like step backs and the ability to put the ball on the floor. And Houston's basically a set shooter that's out there. However, I think that, you know, Houston, I'm not expecting him to just shoot 35% from 3-point land. If he comes back, he's going to get stronger. He's going to get more confident. This experience that he goes through. And if he ends up coming back to Ann Arbor, you know, I was looking at both Shannon Jr.'s and Llewellyn's 3-point numbers, and, you know, they're both better than Houston's, but they weren't when they were freshmen. Those guys, you know, were miserable from downtown. And, you know, your game evolves and you get better at shooting. I would expect that from Houston. I mean, the shot looks good. And with an additional year here, making that jump, I would expect to see that there from Caleb Houston. So while I like watching Diabate more, I think it would be better and fit for what Michigan's looking for if Houston returned.
Yeah, nailed it. I agree 100%. And then, yeah, that, like I said, the feedback on whether it was Michigan trying to make him a spot up, because yeah, the same thing. You watched his tape and what we expected to see out of Houston versus what we got. There's a little bit of a disconnect and some inconsistency. I think some of it's just confidence. I mean, we've seen it with Poole, Livers, even guys like Duncan, if you want to go far enough back, that and the freshman to sophomore jump, hopefully that's legit. But I think it was tough for him to be a good fit on the floor at the same time as Moussa at the 4 and Hunter at the 5. So yeah, Shannon and even Jet maybe can give us some more of the high flying plays that we like. And then if we can get some better shooting from Houston, I will take it. Yeah,
and Shannon Jr., when it comes down to the entertainment standpoint, man, he can really throw it down. All right. Yep. And that gets us, we are less than 48 hours away from the NFL draft, and I've put, I think, most of Michigan's draft eligible players up on the screen. Let's work through them a little bit. Aidan Hutchinson, for the longest time, he was the presumptive number 1 pick, although, you know, there was always the idea of, like, what flavor do you like here if you're Jacksonville? And as the last week has gone by, maybe 2 weeks, things have changed a little bit. Lots of speculation. So much so that if you look at any of the gambling sites now, Aidan Hutchinson was the favorite to go to Jacksonville, but he's not anymore. That is Trayvon Walker from Georgia, who is a defensive end as well. What about Hutchinson, and where do you think he's going to land, the defensive end from Michigan?
Yeah, he's the best player in the draft right now. Highest floor, work ethic, character. I think it's funny when people talk about Balky favoring Walker, they talk about him preferring athletic ends where Hutchinson's not. And it's just this big misconception about him. You know, his athletic score, the RAS from the combine, was one of the top 20 in like 20 something years. So he's an athletic freak too. But maybe Balky just doesn't want to draft a hardball player. Maybe that pettiness from San Francisco is still there. I had them penciled in for an O-lineman for a long time as well. But honestly, this is just what dysfunctional franchises do. There is probably 3 different opinions in there between the coaching staff, the GM, the owner, and they're going to come to some consensus, and they're probably scared to make a safe pick. So, you know, I do think it's not going to be Hutch at this point. If it was just mock drafts changing and some smoke like that, then whatever. But the betting markets, every single one of them moving when Hutch was at one point minus 800 favorite post combine. Yeah, I think he's going to not go to Jacksonville. He's going to go to Detroit. I'd be shocked, like John Jansen said, if they did not take him. He's just such a perfect culture fit for what they're doing. I'm sure they've scouted no player in the draft more with him being in the backyard. So it's obviously going to be Jacksonville or Detroit. And if I had to bet right now, I'm taking Detroit.
Yeah, I don't think the Lions are going to take a safety or corner at number 2, and I don't think they're going to take a quarterback either. So I think all along they had 3 defensive ends, and how they ended up ranking them, whether they had Trayvon Walker in front of Aidan Hutchinson or whether they had Kayvon Thibodeau up there, I don't know for sure. But when you start talking about culture, as you just did, and if culture is important, and the Lions have said as much, there's nobody that checks that box more than Aidan Hutchinson. Relentless, getting after the quarterback, all of those things. And, while Thibodeau, and I don't know about Trayvon Walker's the work ethic and all of that, he is a little bit of a project Walker because he's just had the 1 year, like all of these guys, like Hutchinson, they've talked about his arm length and how when he went up against, like in Georgia, he went up against some outstanding tackles, how, he didn't show out there. But, the Walker started out as a defensive tackle, he's defensive end. It might take him a little bit longer before he realizes really his full potential. And Thibodeau, he's been talked about, and holes have been poked in his game left and right. And mostly it has to do with his, perspective on the game and all that. So how do you really know? Now, if you and I were able to go out and, the Lions did talk with Thibodeau and stand there with him and have meetings and really be able to look him in the eye, we might have a different opinion about all of that. But I'm with you. If it's Walker, I think it's a real easy selection. And I haven't heard anybody else. You got a million draft analysts, and they're thinking just as I'm thinking and as you're talking about, that if Walker goes, it's the perfect fit for the Detroit Lions. They need him. It's everything they've talked about. Yeah, he's a local guy as well. So if Walker goes, I'll put $100. But I won't get that great of return on Hutchinson going to the Lions.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So, and my heart wants it too. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, it felt like that way pre-combine, and it feels like as we're getting closer to the draft, it's trending towards Walker 1, Hutchinson 2. So yeah, I'm with you. $100, whatever, that'd be my bet.
Yeah, depending on how much you do want to dig and look for, his arm length, or you don't like this part. Remember, Chase Young from Ohio State, who was picked, number 2, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that, he disappeared against Michigan. The Wolverines did a great job, and then he wasn't there in the college football semifinal either. And so his 2 biggest games, he was really a magician out there. But they're like, well, you don't want to hold that against him. And, they didn't hold it against him, and he's worked out. He looks like he's been an exceptional defensive end there for now not the Washington football team. What are they, the Commanders?
Commanders.
So the Commanders, got their guy. I looked back today at pros and cons from Myles Garrett, because he's like the prototype, all pro and everything else coming out of Texas A&M. I remember reading the story about him, like, this guy's, he's going to be the greatest of all time. But the story had the pros and cons, and they were really they were debating, talking about the Browns, if they should go for Mitchell Trubisky or with Myles Garrett. They ended up making the right choice, obviously, there. But some of the knocks on Garrett were maturity, and then if he was going to be able to handle a year at an outpost like Cleveland, where defensive ends, and they're pointed to Vaughn Miller and some others who didn't, that defensive ends can take a little time, before they have, great sack production. All 3 of these guys are going to have to, deal with the possibility of the reality for that. So, even Myles Garrett is recently, or Chase Young, these guys will be knocked. I told you I was only going to keep you for a little while. Let's go through this a little bit. Dax Hill, the Lions have the last pick in the first round that they got from the Rams. If Daxton Hill, I know I said this on the Wolverine Den. You were putting things out, posting, you got the draft stuff going. You got the ball rolling 2 months ago, maybe a month ago. I got quickly in on that thread. So I wouldn't mind seeing Hutchinson go second and Dax Hill go 32 to the Lions. And it felt like a little bit of a homer, post. But truthfully, I wouldn't mind. I think that would be great for the Lions. And clearly it'd be good for these 2 players getting selected in the first round.
Yeah, no, he's the second best safety in the draft at this point. He's kind of cemented that. Everything I've seen in terms of mocks, consensus, whatever, is 32. If he's still there, he's not getting past Detroit. At this point, I don't think he's going to be there anymore. I think you start getting into 17 to the Chargers, might be the earliest he could go, but he's somewhere in the 20s probably, and he's probably going to end up on a good team. You're talking about Patriots, Bills, Chiefs, Packers. are all kind of looking at him, especially as teams are doing more of these 3 safety looks, having his versatility. I think the Packers at 28 is the consensus right now. But yeah, he's locked into the first round, in my opinion. We'll see. There's going to be a lot of guys with third round grades going early and guys with first round grades going late, just because of the difference in the way teams are looking at guys this year. But no, I've got Dak second best safety and somewhere in the 20s, and Detroit is probably targeting, I think it's Lewis Sy. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but the safety from Georgia.
That's
so
right.
So if Dax is still there, then yeah, that's a no-brainer pick. I know it feels homer saying Michigan, but if you're talking about checking not only best player available, but also at a position of need, both of those guys do that. I wouldn't be shocked or upset if that happened.
Well, let's test your Michigan homerism. What if it goes Hutchinson, Hill? Could I interest you in David Ojabo at 34? and if I couldn't, if Hill and Side weren't there at 32, could I interest you in the Lions moving out of 32, moving into the second round with 2 picks, and one of those taking David Ojabo? Are you interested in either of those 2 scenarios?
Yeah, so 32 is a sneaky valuable pick because it's the last pick of the first round. So if somebody did want to get a quarterback that slid, that first round pick has a 5th-year option. Also, too, with Ojabo, if you're looking at him as a redshirt year, that 5th-year option could be a way to extend that. So he does still have first round potential because of that. Homerism. Yes, I would want Detroit to take him, but I don't know if it's the best fit. I think he needs to go somewhere where he can be maybe a straight third down guy for a year and kind of work his way up. The Chiefs actually picking before the Lions have 2 picks, where I've seen him go a lot, where the Chiefs with their second round pick at 50, I believe, seems to be where a lot of people think he's going. But the comp to him is Washington's defensive tackle, Levi Onwuzurike. Exact same injury during his pro day last year. Lions took him at 41. He's back to full health and probably going to be a solid contributor for Detroit this year. So another guy they've probably had a lot of scouting on being in the backyard. So no, Hutch, Hill, Ojabo, can you imagine? Poor Michigan State fans. If you happen to be a Sparty and a Lion fan, if they went 3 straight Michigan players.
Hey, I'm always like this. And I like the Lions taking Charles Rogers way back in the day.
Yeah.
Once guys go pro, I'm all right. If they're from Ohio State, but I like Chris Spielman. It doesn't matter. I thought Jeff Okudah, I was rooting, or it was like I was rooting against him to be seemingly a bust. But yeah, you still definitely pay attention when they're guys, from the school you like. Ojabo, it might be a little bit earlier, 34, but for the Lions, and I know a lot of Lion fans don't feel like this, but I still do. I think next year, this is likely a 5 or 6 win team. Yeah. And so when you're talking about looking up at everybody else in the Central, I know Lion fans don't want to hear that. They think, the possibility of winning 8-9 games is there, and it is. Whatever. But if it really is a long play, like Brad Holmes said, it was going to be a long play, and a long play is not second year jumping up and biting everybody and, winning something, unseating the Packers and winning it for the first time in I don't even know, close to 30 years now for the Lions. So I think Ojabo would be in play. What about the rest of these guys? Chris Hinton, Andrew Stuber, Hassan Haskins. I put some grades next to them with the millions of different mock drafts. This is about where these guys are projected to go. Would you want to put somebody a little bit higher, put them a little bit lower? What do you think about Stuber, Hinton, and Haskins?
Yeah, so I mean, Haskins sticks out to me as somebody who could potentially go as high as the 3rd. I think he's probably in that 4th or 5th range. But yeah, strong, physical, third down running back. The whole NFC North could be looking at him. I do think that's another team, the Lions, or another Michigan player the Lions could be looking at. I've seen Steelers, Eagles, Broncos, and Bills, I believe, been the top one for Haskins. But Hinton's going to probably get drafted higher than people expect because he was a 5-star recruit, and scouts don't forget that. And his dad's a former NFL player. So I could see somebody taking a flyer on him in the 4th or 5th round. Ravens, hardball tie there. Jets, Cowboys, Browns are a couple teams I've seen there, but I think Hinton could be a flyer. Stuber's an awesome depth piece, 4th to 7th round. I think that's a perfect spot for him because he's going to be a guy that can come in as the 6th or 7th lineman and back up at any guard spot and play tackle and potentially earn a starting guard job down the road. So I think he's in a good spot and to get taken. And of the guys that are in that undrafted range, the one I think is going to sneak up and get drafted is Josh Ross. Ross is just a solid intangibles guy and killed in every interview he was in. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Chargers, who drafted his brother a few years back, take a look at him in like the 5th or 6th or 7th round, somewhere in that range. Any of these guys could get drafted. You know, Michigan carries that weight that they're willing to take shots on due to Vincent Gray. It could go to a team like the Titans that play a traditional defense, need a big corner. You know, Brad Hawkins is a guy I was surprised didn't get invited to the combine. But I could see him being a 6th round pick with some of the West Coast zone defenses like Rams and Niners, Seahawks. I could see one of them taking a shot on Hawkins around the 6th round as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, but they'll be peppered in throughout. So we'll be able to spend all weekend waiting to see where these guys land.
I wouldn't be surprised if Astartes sticks around for a while, like Ross, multi-year captain guy. But unlike Hinton, was not a 5-star recruit, was a walk-on, but went all the way and really played excellent last year. When you look at sometimes, you know, if you didn't know about his background and you were just watching Michigan, and definitely you're watching Michigan against Ohio State, you're like, well, who's this guy running around, pulling, smashing guys, reach blocks, everything else? Oh, that's Astartes. So I wouldn't be surprised. And like you mentioned, Hawkins, you know, he looks like he makes plays, and let's see the rest of them. Always a shot there. Good stuff. Now, I asked, and I put some up myself, about sleepers and guys that you want to stay away from. I've put them up on the screen. I don't think the Lions should do anything at number 2 if we're talking about Detroit with quarterbacks. I would stay all the way away from any quarterback at 2. And I don't think overall the Lions should do anything with Sam Howell, the quarterback from North Carolina. Now, if he falls to like the 3rd or 4th round, could that be different? Not early 3rd round, maybe 4th round, but I don't think he's going to last that long. I would stay away from Howell. What about you? Any players that you're thinking about staying away from?
Yeah, I'm with you on Howell. The drop off this year, you know, they lost some wide receivers, and the drop off was significant. And
I don't see it.
I don't either. I just honestly, I struggle with any of the guys being projected in the 1st round in terms of quarterbacks, just because they're getting 2nd round grades. And, you know, I see what the ceiling is for Malik Willis and the potential. I worry about him leaving Auburn and playing at Liberty. You know, I see the Kenny Pickett, the good, but I also see him being a potential career backup, you know. So I would be fine. Like you said, if like a Ritter or one of these guys slides to the 2nd round, sure. Otherwise, I like what's the Nevada kid, Carson Strong, the Valen Zappi from Western Kentucky, and the Western kid as well. These are guys, if I'm getting those in 3rd or 4th round, I'm taking a flyer because I'm starting Goff anyway. That I much prefer that than taking a shot on one of these other QBs that are overranked, and you're going into a monster QB class next year. So you're hoping you're not picking in the top 5 necessarily. But I'm with you. I think it's a 5 or 6 win team. You're gonna have a shot at a quarterback next year in the draft, where you can do like the Rams did, a trade for somebody. But yeah, I'd stay away from Howell for sure, and most of those top QBs.
I put a bevy of guys that I put in the sleeper category. A lot of them are from the Big Ten. I watch a lot of Big Ten football. I love Jack Sanborn at Wisconsin. David Bell, I think, you know, has everything that I would love to see him in a Lions uniform. Tyler Goodson, he's more of a pass-catching back, but he's got the moves. He looks like a pro. James Cook went for over 100 on the Lions. On the Wolverines. Hate to bring up that Orange Bowl, but his brother playing, being such a great back as well. There were the Vikings, doesn't hurt him. And I think Kobe Bryant, everybody talking about, the opposite corner and Sauce Gardner and everything. Kobe Bryant's pretty good and I don't see him being projected that high. All of these guys, I think, to me, I would put in the sleeper category. That's why I put him there. Anybody that jumps out to you as a sleeper as we talk about the NFL draft.
Yeah. I'll have to show you my sleeper list that I had prepared for this because I think I literally have all the same people. Yeah. So I'm with you, David Bell. I would add in Jalen Naylor from Michigan State. I'm really surprised how low he's getting mocked. Tyler Goodson, I think might be my favorite running back in the draft. So huge sleeper on him as well. I think he's got more between the tackle ability than people think. I wouldn't be shocked if he goes to the right fit, if he's a solid contributor in his rookie year. I don't know if you can call Cook a sleeper anymore because
maybe
where they're getting mocked. Yeah, because you're not a sleeper anymore if you get drafted higher, right? Then now
right. I mean, if he goes in the second round, he's not a sleeper. Maybe not even the third, but if he's fallen to the fourth, then he's a sleeper.
My favorite one you have on there is Kobe Bryant, though. I'm with you 100%. Sauce Gardner is getting a lot of attention, as he should. But I think Kobe Bryant is going to be a solid CB2 that you're going to potentially get in the third round in this draft. I also like we played against Washington last year, Kyler Gordon. That's another corner I've seen second or third round that I think would be a huge steal. And then just more Big Ten guys. Rasheed Walker's a tackle out of Penn State. I like him a lot as well. And then Trevor Penning is mocked like the fourth or fifth offensive lineman a lot of times back into the first round. And I think he's probably the best offensive lineman in the draft. So he's kind of a sleeper guy for me as well. But otherwise, you nailed. Justin Ross, kid out of Clemson. I know he had that obviously serious injury in 2020. But if I'm getting him in the fourth round and he's 80% of what he used to be, that's a steal, in my opinion. And if he somehow recaptures what he once was, then it's beyond a steal, right? So, but no, you nailed it. I think Tyler Goodson, that's probably my favorite sleeper running back. And David Bell, every game I watched with Purdue, just a solid physical guy, route runner, good hands. Seems like a perfect NFL. I mean, he's not going to take the roof off or anything, but he seems like a perfect NFL receiver.
Well, it took to the last minute, but you came in really hot on the tackle take. The Penning being the best. I like it. So, good job. You're doing great work in the Maize and Blue Review. For more, people should join up almost every day. You've got a story. They're not all hot takes, but you do a good job. The stories, everything else. We certainly appreciate your time here. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. You too, bud.
All right, see you. Enjoy the draft, and I'll talk to you beforehand.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, that'll do